What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my NFL DFS contenders on FanDuel for Week 1 in the NFL. It's exciting to be back. Now hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Then head to Twitter and follow me, at Josh Engleman. Only place you're going to get updates to my sim results as we get closer to lock. Plus, No House Advantage, sponsoring the show. How exciting is that? Click the link. There's no link to click. See the banner over here? I'm pointing to it. That's as far as I can point. At least I pointed in the right direction to start. Use the promo code Awesemo. Get yourself a little bit of a bonus. But thank you, No House Advantage. I appreciate having you guys. Finally, let me know in the comment section, who are your favorite contenders at each position? I'm about to hit you with my top 5 at tight end, wideout, running back, and quarterback. As you can see, we got the top 10 in defense. It's the Denver Broncos at 4,100, and then everybody else is basically the same. But for now, we're diving in to tight ends. Rounding out the bottom of my top 10 in basically a random order, Austin Hooper, Robert Tonyan, Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant, and Jonnu Smith on the outside looking in. But as you can see, 3, 4, 5, pretty similar. And then we get to a very different tier. At number 5, we go to Logan Thomas. He's 5,600. Slight favorites against the Chargers. Good offense, terrible defense for the Chargers, but you're just hoping to get touchdown lucky in situations like this. Logan Thomas has a very small chance of going for north of 25 fantasy points. He could be a bust. Sub 10 happens 65% of the time. That's not crazy. Normally, if I'm not getting a tight end at the tippy top of this list, he's probably getting inserted into my lineup for salary savings or as part of a stack. So if you're trying to stack up Washington, great. Use Logan Thomas. If you only have $5,600 left, maybe use Logan Thomas. Otherwise, there are better options at the top. There's a 50% likelihood that one of the 3 highest ranked tight ends is in the optimal lineup. It's 41% for just the top 2. It's a coin flip to get out of the top 3. So it's going to be tough to pick anyone outside of that realm. So make sure you're at least correlating your lineup while you do it. Number 4 is the rookie Kyle Pitts, 6K, projected a little bit over 9 fantasy points. Matchup against the Eagles. It's an average-ish offense for Atlanta. It's an average-ish defense for the Eagles. You don't expect 25 plus. He's got a 9% chance of being in the optimal lineup. I don't have a ton to say about tight ends in this range. It's just tricky, but I do like stacking him up with Matt Ryan. The only other guy in double digits, TJ Hockenson, 5,700, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Lions, not great. 7-point dogs, 45-point game total. At the very least, you expect Detroit to have to throw the ball kind of frequently, given the fact that they should be behind. This is not a great offense. It's a pretty good Niners D, but either way, TJ Hockenson's got a 10% chance of being in the optimal. That's the 3rd highest mark on the slate. But the next 2 guys, double him up. And I can only guess that you're not all that surprised. 7K George Kittle coming in number 2, projected for 12 fantasy points. Kittle's got the benefit of the matchup against the Lions, the projected number 32 defense in the league. Yes, that is dead last. 7.5-point favorites, 45-point total. You expect Kittle to be involved. Got a slight shot of going for north of 25 fantasy points. It's tricky on FanDuel. You only get the half-point PPR, but a 20% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's just shy of our number 1 guy that everybody obviously knows. But either way, you want to make sure you're getting to a lot of George Kittle this week. Because you're going to need another $1,500 to get to our number 1 tight end. That would be Travis KELCE. He is 8,500, projected for 15.5 fantasy points. Taking on Cleveland, solid D, but we still have the Chiefs as the big 6-point favorite with a 54.5-point total. There's a 12% chance that Travis KELCE goes for north of 25 fantasy points and a 22% likelihood, 21% likelihood that he is in the optimal lineup. I tried to round up even further than I needed to. It's either KELCE or Kittle in most lineup constructions. You should have the money, especially in week 1, given the softer pricing, to be able to pay up to a KELCE and a Kittle. Otherwise, you are looking to cross your fingers and hope for some touchdown luck on basically everyone else. Very different experience at wideout in comparison to the DraftKings video. This is a lot flatter than I was expecting. Nobody really breaking free from the pack. And I think it's probably because guys are a little bit more muted with the half-point PPR. So, rounding out the bottom of the top 10 in wideout, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Lockett. So 2 Seahawks in the bottom of the top 10. Who's in the top 5? First up is the big play man known as TYREEK Hill, 8,500, projected for 15 fantasy points. 6-point favorites. We've already talked a little bit about the Chiefs in this matchup against the Browns. We're talking about a boom-bust player here. 11% chance of going north of 25 fantasy points. A 24% chance of going for less than 10. You're looking for big play touchdowns. When TYREEK Hill scores a touchdown, it's usually a pretty big score for the day. 14% likelihood, though, of being in the optimal lineup. It's just not all that frequent. 14% of being in the optimal lineup makes him the 5th best option individually at wideout, but he's still not in an optimal 86% of the time. Climbing the board to number 4, 7,800. Didn't mention him before, but A.J. Brown, basically projected for 15 fantasy points, taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Tennessee, slight favorites, 52-point total. This is the number 2 offense at PFF and a below-average defense at number 18 for the Cardinals. I like it. Almost a 9% chance of being north of 25 fantasy points, but the real piece for me, a 16% likelihood of being in the optimal. Given that total, given those odds, I'm happy to bring A.J. Brown into my lineup. Feels like a pretty nice stack with Tannehill as well. The final 3 guys here are absolute studs. Number 3, Stefon Diggs, and I guess like the top 5 are all studs if we want to add Hill and Brown. 7,900 for Diggs. 15.7 fantasy point projection for Buffalo. Tough matchup against Pittsburgh. Steelers defense really good, but we're still seeing the Bills as 6.5-point favorites. Almost a 50-point total. We know Diggs can go for big numbers. 12% chance of going for north of 25. An 18% chance of being in the optimal. I'm digging Diggs, so to speak. Pun intended, but I can't go too crazy. I'm going to be really, really flat with my wide receiver ownership this week. 8,600 on FanDuel will get you my number 2 wideout. That's Davante Adams, projected for 16.5. He's got a difficult matchup against the Saints D. The Saints offense is up in the air, but the Saints defense is just legitimately good. But we've got a 50-point game total here, and he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. So I assume things are just going to be great for Adams until something happens. 16% chance of going for north of 25. Does have the chance to go for less than 10, but you're not really worried about that. You're looking for upside for Davante Adams, and he's got an 18% chance of being in the optimal. That's the 2nd highest mark of any wide receiver on this slate. You can easily pay up. There's enough value out there for you to be able to do it, but make sure you're mixing and matching these guys. I'm giving you guys a top 10, and the most likely scenario is only one of these guys makes the optimal lineup for the week. Maybe you get to 2. Probably not as likely, though. We're looking to pull one guy out of here. So if you see one guy in this list that you think is the guy, don't be afraid to hitch your wagon. And then we get to my number 1 FanDuel wideout this week. That's Calvin Ridley. 8,100, projected for 16 fantasy points. A matchup against Philly. We got a slightly above average offense, a slightly above average defense for the Eagles, a 48-point game total. You know the Falcons are going to try to throw the ball. I'm excited to see what Kyle Pitts can do. I'm hoping that actually opens things up a little bit more for Ridley, who's got a 12% chance of going for north of 25 fantasy points, and the highest mark on the slate, a 19% chance of being an optimal wide receiver. As we transition to running back, this is where we'll find a little bit more value. We're closing it out with Gibson, Eckler, McCaffrey, Mostert, and Najee Harris, but we've got 5 guys at the top and a little bit of salary savings to do so. First up, we're sort of in the middle of the pack here, 7,200, maybe a little bit higher than middle of the pack for Joe Mixon, projected for 14.5 fantasy points. This is an actual middle of the pack Minnesota defense. They are 15th at PFF, the 19th ranked offense for Cincinnati, although I think there's a lot of variance in that mark just given the health of Joe Burrow. 8% chance that Mixon goes for north of 25, and that's really what you're looking for. Probably 2 touchdowns, maybe a couple extra passes caught, but a 15% chance of being in the optimal lineup. I really like this price for Mixon going up against the Vikings. But I don't like it as much as the running back in the opposite backfield. That's $9,400 Dalvin Cook. Now, you're going to have to cut a pretty big check to get him, but 19 fantasy points, a matchup against Cincinnati, and it's sort of the same situation. We've got a middle-of-the-pack Minnesota Vikings offense. We've got a middle-of-the-pack Cincinnati Bengals defense. We've got close to a 50-point fantasy point total, but we've got big-time upside for Cook. 26.5% chance of going north of 25 and a 17% chance of simply being in the optimal lineup. Maybe this turns into a running affair, but you're going to want to get to Cook, and you're going to want to get to Mixon. But I hope you guys see this right now. My preference on FanDuel is Cook over McCaffrey. We're still paying up in these next two spots. At number 3, we've got Derrick Henry. He's 8,900. Projected for 18 fantasy points, taking on Arizona. Big time game total. Tennessee, slight favorite, so you're hoping that game script works out well for him. This is the number 2 offense at PFF, taking on the number 18 defense. I think that's a really nice spot for Derrick Henry. You know the kind of upside he has. If they're trapped on their own 1-yard line, get ready for the alert to pop up on your phone that Derrick Henry had a 99-yard touchdown. Goes for 25, 21% of the time. Goes for the optimal lineup 19% of the time. Find the money on FanDuel this week because running back is loaded at the top. Because I'm not done talking about pay-up running backs. Number 2 overall, but the best pay-up option you'll find is ALVIN KAMARA. He's 8,600, projected for 18 fantasy points. It's a tough matchup, number 8 defense for the Packers, but I don't know what to make of this Saints offense. This game is a road game for them. It's a neutral field game overall, but they're not playing in New Orleans even though they should have been. It's a 3.5 point. They're 3.5 point dogs, so that's fine for me. I expect KAMARA to be involved whether they're ahead or behind, passing game or running game. 23% chance of going north of 25. A 20% chance of being in the optimal lineup altogether. My hope is that Jameis Winston's threat downfield opens up more for KAMARA around the line of scrimmage. We'll see how that plays out. If you watch the breakfast menu with myself and Ben Raza, I took the Saints outright in this game. So I'm a believer in the Saints, and I'm a believer in ALVIN KAMARA. But the best spot you will find all weekend at running back on FanDuel is $5,900 James Robinson for the Jags. 14-point projection. They're 3-point favorites against Houston. This game is gross, by the way. They are the 26th ranked offense at PFF, and they get a matchup against the 31st ranked defense. This is the toilet bowl. The winner of this game is a loser in more than one sense because that's going to put them a little bit further away than the number 1 draft pick. I don't expect James Robinson to go totally bonkers. 6.5% chance of going for north of 25. He's going to need 2 touchdowns to get there. But a 22% likelihood of being in the optimal lineup because that $5,900 price tag is the best price you'll find on anybody on FanDuel all week. Now, before we close it out with the quarterbacks, one last reminder, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. It's the only place you'll get updates to these sims as we get closer to lock. I will definitely be releasing them in between my 2 shows. I'm live from 9 to 10 with Adam Scher. I'm live from 12 to 1 with Eric and Matt Savoca, I believe. But tune in either way. We're going to be live for 4 hours. These updates will happen in between all of those shows on my Twitter feed. Plus, I said it at the beginning and I'm going to say it again here. Thank you to No House Advantage. Peep the banner at the bottom of the screen. Use the promo code when signing up and get a little bit of free loot. Plus, we've got tons of No House Advantage tools on the website. Finally, comment section underneath this video. Let me know who you're liking and disliking at every one of these positions. We close it out with my least favorite position on the slate, but honestly, there's a bit more separation on FanDuel this week than there normally is. Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, and Jalen Hurts round out the bottom of the top 10, but they are all basically projected the same. This top 5 is on a different tier, and my number 1 is significantly different than the rest of the list. At number 5, we get to Trevor Lawrence, 6,800, making his debut for the Jags along with Urban Meyer. 19 fantasy point projection, slight favorites, great matchup against Houston because the Texans stink. We just have no idea what to make of Lawrence here. So he might go for north of 25 fantasy points. That happens 6% of the time. He's in the optimal lineup 7% of the time. If you're stacking, obviously find a wide receiver to go with him. Individually, though, he's a really nice point per dollar play at 6,800. Now we start to get into the good $7,800 Russell Wilson, projected for 21 fantasy points, gets a matchup against the Colts. Solid Colts D, but obviously a solid Seahawks offense. Whether you're going to Metcalf or Lockett, both guys in the top 10 of my wide receiver rankings, you definitely want to stack them up with Wilson. 50-point total, what's not to like? Still a threat on the ground. 18% chance of going for north of 25 fantasy points, and that's what you're really looking for here. 8% chance to just be in the optimal, but really, the ceiling for Wilson is huge. And if you're going to Russell Wilson, you better be bringing Metcalf and Lockett, or Lockett at least, along for the ride. If you're looking for more of a ground threat, $8,400 Kyler Murray is going to be your guy, and we get into double digits in odds of being in the optimal. 23 fantasy points for Murray, a matchup against Tennessee. If Tennessee's defense matched their offense, they might be the favorites for the Super Bowl, but unfortunately, they are ranked 27th on defense via PFF. Cardinals, middle of the pack offense, but a great fantasy offense. This game is projected for 52 points. We know how quick the Cardinals like to play. 32% chance for Kyler Murray to be north of 25 fantasy points when this game is over. A 10% chance of being just simply in the optimal lineup. I really like getting to Murray. You can make a case that you don't even need to bring anyone with him if you're expecting a big running day, but either way, 8,400 is not a problematic price tag. That gets you to my number 3 quarterback. You probably thought he was going to be number 1, but number 2 is Pat Mahomes at 8,800. Clearly easily stackable, projected for 24 fantasy points. A date with Cleveland, very difficult defensive matchup, but big time total. We're expecting a lot of points here. He goes north of 25. Coin flip-ish, 45% of the time, in fact. That's kind of crazy. But even still, just a 12% likelihood of being in the optimal. It's a really big price tag. The ceiling is there. There aren't many guys that match the ceiling of Pat Mahomes. But at 8,800, you're going to have to make some concessions elsewhere if you're going to Mahomes, because you're probably bringing Travis KELCE or Tyreek Hill along for the ride. And at that point, you're using a lot of salary. But that's okay, because the points will be there. Don't be afraid of going to a Mahomes Kansas City stack. It's expensive, but it looks fantastic in comparison to ownership. But the number 1 quarterback for the slate on FanDuel is my boy Josh Allen, 8,100, projected for 23 fantasy points. Very difficult matchup against this Pittsburgh D. They do rank 3rd, but Josh Allen transcends matchup, hombre. He's a 6.5-point favorite with a 48.5-point total in this game and a 36.6% chance of going north of 25 fantasy points. You're going to want him in those situations. 15% likelihood of being in the optimal, and you save a little bit of salary over Mahomes, and that's why you see the separation. The Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs pairing should be quite popular this week as well, because obviously they're 2 of the best things that you can get at both positions. Don't overthink it too much. Josh Allen is the number 1 quarterback on FanDuel this week. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS contenders, my favorites at each position on FanDuel for week 1 in the NFL. Like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. We've got tons of content coming up over the weekend, including 4 full hours of content on Sunday leading into the week 1 lock. Good luck, everybody. Keep your eyes peeled for more content, and I will see you guys again. Let's call it Sunday morning for some contenders for Sunday Night Football. Yeah, that's happening.